broke, and I had to drop everything and react to the huge, hard-hitting news that Nintendo cut Switch 2 output by over 30% on weak US sales. Oh, what a bad thing for Nintendo. If Bloomberg, who is a totally reliable outlet who has never lied about anything ever, if they say Nintendo is bad, I'm sure Nintendine and the rest are going to like use this as a verified source going forward, right? Well, unfortunately, Takashi Mochizuki has a very bad reputation in the Nintendo space. As you can see here, this is the guy that was behind, complaining about storage. This is the guy who, started the whole share price thing right before they exploded again with Pokepia, by the way. This is the guy who tried to tell people that, let's see, that third-party game. Okay, that Nintendo had everything to prove again in 2026. So the idea that Takashi Mochizuki is some unbiased like industry person who's watching everything Nintendo is doing and like understands the business, this is like obviously not true. Like if you look at his entire like backlog of content, Nintendo's struggling with memory prices. They have to prove themselves in 2026. Their software sales aren't keeping up with hardware boom. Nintendo Switch 2 sales boom fails to ease game developers' gloom, which I actually looked at this article, and apparently this is where it was initially stated that third-party developers were having problems selling on Switch 2, which of course we know now is not true. So this has been a major source of contention in the community, like whether or not this individual knows what he's talking about or not. And as of this recording, going back through it, looking back through his statements and looking back through like Bloomberg's history, I can now very confidently say that this individual, Takashi Mochizuki, has no idea what he's talking about. He's completely making it up. He's downplaying Nintendo. He's trying to make it seem like they're in a bad position, while the Switch 2 is breaking sales records. Not only is the Switch 2 selling well in the US, it's selling very, very well. Pokepia is a huge hit, and that's very, very observable. And yet these individuals are bending over backwards, doing everything they possibly can to legitimize the idea that there's something wrong with the Switch 2, that games aren't selling on it, that they don't have like any system sellers, that Nintendo needs to announce a direct now, that the share prices are going down. Like we've heard all kinds of excuses over the past like year or so. And I think a lot of them have roots with this individual. Let's see if we can find any more here. New ways to have fun with old characters. Let's see. Forecast Unchained. Let's see. In boon for game sectors. Nintendo Switch 2's lures fans to biggest gadget launch in years. A shrewd plan for selling the Switch 2 in Japan. Let's see. Sony sees Nintendo doesn't roll out Switch price hike after soft outlook. Yeah, keep in mind, this was in May 2025. Okay, we've been seeing these retards going on about like price hikes for like almost a year now. And it really needs to be said that it's not going to fucking happen. Like they were so desperate for it to happen because they really thought it would impact sales. And it's not going to happen, and it wouldn't if it did. So Nintendo sees overwhelming demand for Switch 2 in Japan. Okay, so one of the things you'll notice about these people is that they'll acknowledge Nintendo's success in Japan, but then they'll preface that and then be like, well, like Japan is a small country though. The rest of the world is way more important, and imply that like Nintendo is doing badly everywhere else, which tends to be like the reality of like how these people go about things. But in Japan, yep. Nintendo gains time to prep Switch 2 debut with tariff pause. Let's see. Nintendo is taking a page from Sony's playbook with new Switch. Yeah. So again, you see this a lot with these business analyst types where they try and like act as if Sony is the innovator and that Nintendo is the imitator. So they always try and do this thing where they misrepresent what's happening and act as if Nintendo is copying Sony. Um, Nintendo shares slide after Switch 2 peak yields few surprises. Yet again, complaining about the stock price drop. And again, this was before they reached their all-time high in September, I think it was. So again, this is just nothing he says like holds any water whatsoever. Like, let's see. Yeah, so he's been like Nintendo seeks 65, yeah, from Pokemon with Gun Studio. I love how they don't even say Pocket Pair or Power World. They say Pokemon with Guns. Nintendo's next console will play current Switch games. Nintendo sees bigger profit fall on faltering Switch demand. So you can see how this is like slanted. You can see like the angle they're trying to go with these headlines. Nintendo sees bigger profit fall on faltering Switch demand. Like the idea that like the Switch 1 was like failing and that it wasn't doing well and that it needed to be replaced imminently, right? Like again, like, oh, Nintendo's failing, guys. They're failing. The Switch, the most popular console ever, it's not going to exist like going forward. It's the Bandai Namco. Nintendo sues Pokemon with Gun Studio for patent abuse. Has it really been two? Yeah, it's almost been 2 years. A year and a half. Let's see. Nintendo profit dives 71% on slowing demand for aging Switch. Yep. Yeah, again, like it's always these like articles that try to paint things in the most negative light possible. Um yeah, Sony shares jump after profit bats. Yeah, yeah. So like yeah, Nintendo shares fall on weak outlook while next Switch awaited. Yep, yep. So like again, it's yeah, and he does a lot of articles on Power World too. So again, like it seems like Nintendo sinks after game makers say Switch 2 pushed in 2025. Uh, Nintendo is telling game publishers Switch 2 will be delayed. What? When did that happen? Nintendo's next Switch coming this year with LCD. Yeah, he said that in 2024. So yeah, like this guy has a long history of just making things up and misrepresenting things. Like it's very observable just by reading these headlines. Like it's just a complete joke. Like this guy is a complete and total fraud, and he has been formally inducted into the Harman Smith Blacklist for what he's tried to do in downplaying the Switch 2 after the success of Pokapia. And come to think of it, we didn't see an article from him talking about how the stock price jumped after Pokapia came out. Now, did we? That's very amusing, and I imagine we're not going to see it happen after the Mario Galaxy movie launches, or like there's no source for this. Okay, like you look at like the information he provides, and like everything he says just comes off as if it's not true. I mean, hang on, is there a way we can get the article reposted? Let's see. So okay. Nintendo Switch 2, hang on. Okay, Nintendo Switch 2 output by over 30% on weak US sales. Okay, let's I'm gonna run this through ChatGPT and see if we can get a summary of it. Summarize this article. So the article itself is copyrighted, but we can put it through ChatGPT and get a summation. Key takeaways. Nintendo is cutting Switch 2 production by over 30%. The company now plans to produce 4 million units this quarter instead of 6 million. So you're telling me that like a 2 million difference for the quarter, that's like nothing. Like reason, weaker than expected holiday sales. Bro, it's March. Demand, especially in the US during the holiday season, fell short of expectations. I love how they're keeping with this coat, by the way. The slowdown may continue. Yeah, after Pokapia, yeah, it's not going to happen. Reduced production expected to carry into at least the next month. So it's like a complete nothing burger of a story, essentially. Like he's making these allegations that that something is happening with like no evidence at all. Context behind the drop. The Switch 2 had a very strong launch, but momentum is now fading. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, Pokepia is the biggest release it's had since launch. Okay. Concerns include lack of enough major exclusive games. Not true. Slower consumer spending globally. Higher component costs like memory chip. What does any of that have to do with Nintendo and the Switch 2? Because people are still buying the hardware and the games. Like, it's just a giant cope. This isn't necessarily a collapse, more of a course correction after initial surge. So that's like how they're trying to handle this, is that like, oh yeah, there was an initial burst of popularity, but now it's irrelevant. Now it's not popular. Now nobody cares about it, and that just isn't true. Okay, Takashi Mochizuki is a clown. Bloomberg can get fucked. Never trust these organizations to cover Nintendo news ever again.